controls without touching you, bends by breaking, travels great distance without once moving, and gives by simply taking. Why can you not answer? Because only a mind unfettered with the concerns of the flesh can see the world as it truly is. That is why the noble work is the answer, the only answer to the imperfections of wildness. The opinions and beliefs of others are as manipulatable as Ethereum itself. And here on Esper, they are the masters of your mind. They are the Sen Triplets.
This video will show you a Sen Triplets deck designed to discourage attacks against you, control those who might dare, and encourage a fun political game where you hold all the answers to everyone else's problems, most of which are caused by you. But the Sen Triplets are one of my favorite commanders, not just because of their color combination, the Esper colors of black, white, and blue bringing just about any type of spell you could want to the table, but also because, unlike so many other commanders, the Sen Triplets in no way encourage a specific deck build. A commander such as Teysa calls for a token or combo strategy, just as a commander such as Tristani calls for a life gain and token deck. And of course, Sliver Overlord and Sig River Guide obviously call for tribal decks. But the Sen Triplets' amazing abilities don't call for any specific deck type to be built around them. The triplets allow you to name an opponent during your upkeep, and then for the duration of your turn, that opponent cannot cast spells or even activate abilities. And they also must play with their hand revealed. That right there is already highly interesting, but there's more. For the duration of your turn, you can play spells from this opponent's hand. That's right, you can play their spells as though they were in your hand. This is an amazing and unique ability, but it in no way pushes you towards any specific deck type. That means that the possibilities are wide open. The list I'm going to show you here is just what I have come to build for the Sen Triplets. But it is not only a highly customizable list, it is also just one build of so many that this commander makes possible. Let's take a look. Before we get to the deck, I want to focus on one card that I feel no triplets player should be without. Look again at her final ability. You may play cards from the chosen opponent's hand during your turn. In Commander, especially 4 to 5 player playgroups, that's going to give you a lot of spells to choose from. Oh, but what if your opponents are playing in colors outside of blue, black, and white? Is this then totally useless? So glad you asked. Celestial Dawn is an enchantment that will allow you to play any of your opponent's spells, regardless of their color requirement. So when this is in play, it allows you to cast any spell from your opponent's hand, regardless of what color requirements that spell has. Because Celestial Dawn lets you spend white mana as though it were mana of any color, and all lands you control are plains. This also has the added benefit of giving us perfect mana fixing in this deck. In Tricolors, we're in trouble if we don't have our ratio of mana just right. But with Celestial Dawn in play, which I often rush towards, we don't have to worry about mana colors. Now, to get this same effect, you can also include Mycosynth Lattice. Although its $20 price tag compared to Celestial Dawn's 50-cent one doesn't really make me want to. Instead of putting both in, I simply have multiple tutors to ensure I get Celestial Dawn out. Also, Lattice can end up helping your opponents by giving them mana fixing, so I suggest only running Dawn. Let's start with the Control Shell. Again, Control is what Esper colors do with gusto. These are my picks from the extensive library of counter spells, bounce spells, and removal, but these can easily be swapped out for your favorite control spells. As far as counter magic goes, we have Desertion, a favorite of mine that lets us gain control of the creature we counter. Hinder, which has the versatility of putting the countered spell either on top or bottom of the opponent's library, perfect for fighting those opponents opponents who want their spells to hit their graveyard, as well as potentially gaining us tempo. Counter Squall and of course the original Counter Spell are each hard counters at 2. And another favorite of mine, Perplex, which can be used very strategically as a counter spell and also can transmute into a 3 mana cost card, which by the way the vast majority of our spells are. For bounce, I've included my absolute favorite bounce spell, Capsize, which can bounce itself back to our hand. Cyclonic Rift hits against one specific foe, and Supreme Verdict, Merciless Eviction, and Larry Niven's Disc, along with Day of Judgment, are standard board wipe for Commander. Detention Sphere helps us against out-of-control token armies, which EDH is often filled with, while Dismember and Utter End give us targeted removal. And a card I feel is a hidden gem, Aether Snap, can help us wipe out planeswalkers, help us wipe out tokens, or even just one of those giant +1/+1 counter-filled creatures. A must in black, and again, only a 50-cent card. What about our creatures? I'm running Phyrexian Metamorph and Clever Impersonator to copy what we can from our opponents, since Commander is just the ideal home for clone effects. Also, we're going to tap into an artifact synergy sub-theme, using some really interesting Esperlings. Magister Sphinx in Commander is great against that life gain opponent who has reached some ungodly high life total, reducing them to 10 instead. Aethersworn Adjudicator is a scary powerhouse. A 4/4 flyer for 5 that you can tap to flat out destroy a target creature or enchantment, and also untap itself for a bit more mana. And this is going to have great synergy with some of our artifact cards, as you'll see in a moment. Sphinx Sovereign is a scary 6/6 flyer that gains you life on the defense and hurts your opponents even more when you are on the offense. Do I even need to talk about the amazing that is Wormcoil Engine at this point? Quite frankly, this card is practically an auto-include in every Commander deck these days. Sphinx of the Steel Wind is another heavy hitter. Flying, first strike, vigilance, lifelink, and protection from both red and green. If your opponents have no answers for it, they're done for. Think these Sphinxes are expensive? Master Transmuter lets us bounce any cheap old artifact and swap it out for any artifact from our hand. Everything so far, and a lot more to come, is an artifact. So Indomitable Archangel is going to protect them with Shroud. Ixodron is a great emergency card to keep everyone else at the table in line, and it pairs wonderfully with Elish Norn for wiping out your opponent's board while keeping and strengthening your own. That's similar to the way Godhead of Awe works with Elish Norn, and that's another combination I adore in this deck. Finally, Blazing Archon is a finisher that keeps our opponents from hitting us, but not us from going after them. Transmuter aside, we do have some costly creatures here, so an Aethersworn Canonist helps us slow down our opponents as we get our board in order. Tutoring is obviously critical with this wide selection of cards, so in addition to Trinket Mage and Sphinx Summoner as a way to get artifacts and artifact creatures we desire, we also want to include Demonic Tutor and Enlightened Tutor. Either is great for grabbing that Celestial Dawn. Again, you can go for even more tutors than this. It is customizable, but I do a moderate build. What artifacts are we including for further synergy? I just can't resist Mindslaver in this deck. The triplets already reveal our opponent's hands and let us cast their spells, so I just have to include Mindslaver. And yes, later on when we get to land, you'll see we have included the Academy Ruins. Scourglass is amazing in this deck. We wipe out everything except our own artifact creatures and artifacts. Perfect for swinging in for the kill or just turning the tide. Darksteel Forge is going to make all our artifacts indestructible, and Lightning Greaves both will protect critical creatures and give our beaters haste. Finally, Unwinding Clock is marvelous synergy. With it in play, all our artifact creatures might as well have vigilance, but also consider what this does when combined with Aethersworn Adjudicator. The Adjudicator would untap at the end of each opponent's turn. A lot of destruction is going to ensue, let alone the mana that Unwinding Clock gives us when combined with mana rocks, like our Darksteel Ingot, Gilded Lotus, Dimir Signet, Orzhov Signet, Azurius Signet, Obelisk of Esper, Chromatic Lantern, and Soul Ring. Again, These will get untapped after each opponent's turn, so we're always going to have oodles of mana for that control shell. And Lonely Robot and Expedition Map round out the acceleration package. Card draw is critical for a deck such as this. We're going to need more and more gas as we control more and more of the board. Insidious Dreams lets us trade away our hand for another. Rhystic Study equals major draw long term. And Shadow Mage Infiltrator lets us be aggressive while getting that card draw. This is great to drop early game. Consecrated Sphinx is the go-to commander card draw engine. Oh look, another artifact creature that works with our tutors and our transmuters. And this one will have us drowning in our own card draw after a few rounds. Next, I couldn't have been more excited for the Thopter Spy Network from Origins. Just a perfect fit for this deck. The deck also runs a selection of Pillow Fort cards. While not a straight out lock down and annoy your opponent's Pillow Fort shell, again, we're doing moderation here, but I do feel we benefit from a little discouragement of our opponents from coming after us, especially early game. Ghostly Prison and Propaganda work to this end, and Grave Pact discourages our opponents targeting us with removal. I also like throwing a few cheap walls up for further protection, and that's why I include Fogbank and Guard Gomazoa. As far as Planeswalkers are concerned, I'm keeping this modest, and only including Tezzeret. Obviously, this is another area where you can easily add additional Planeswalkers that you prefer. This next section emphasizes table politics and fun. If that's not your jam, then everything in here can be swapped out for much more powerful cards. But again, I like keeping triplets from being that super powerhouse, so I've built this to be a more modest political deck. Along those lines, I've included Political Trickery, Bribery, Choice of Damnation, and one of the greatest conversation cards, Guafa Hazid, Profiteer. Guafa is pure flavor, and having opponents barter with you to disable the creatures of other opponents is a pure joy. Make Guafa proud. Oh, and Guafa's profiteering makes it so I can't resist adding Aurification. Yes, it will further discourage attacks, but really, I've only included it because it turns our opponent's creatures to gold. Love it. We're in tricolor, so land ratio is going to be critical. Just like as on Esper, blue makes up our biggest mana symbol, so I've balanced the mana base towards that. I also include the artifact lands because of their amazing synergy with Unwinding Clock. Yes, they are a bit more vulnerable, but I think this is a deck that takes those risks. What I love so much about this deck is how little of a role our commander plays in it. Nonetheless, Sen Triplets are a uniquely powerful and effective card in their own right. They simply are not a build-around-me commander, so there's so much as far as customization is concerned. Don't like the fun politics cards? Don't run them. Want more control and less aggro or vice versa? Go for it. Have another idea entirely? Esper is yours to shape.
Just as your mind and will might be theirs to shape. I hope this video has been of some help to you.
And this video has been brought to you by the generous support of patron alums at Patreon, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.